We will go ahead and start, and each candidate will be given a chance to start. We'll just keep going sequentially to the right, starting. If you started the first last time, you'll be going last the next time. So let's start with, how should we start it? Whoever got the most votes, is that how we're doing it?
No, let's do it in the order that you're standing on the podium, I think.
Okay, sounds good.
Give us less cause for confusion.
I'll defer to her British Majesty's royal subject.
Okay, so we will start at the far end with Larry Sharpe, please. 2 minutes from you.
Hi, everybody. Hey, guys. So we are very lucky this year. We were given a gift. It's a very poorly wrapped gift of Trump and Hillary, but still a gift. So how do we take advantage of this poorly wrapped gift? We have to make sure that we communicate well, because now they're going to hear what we have to say. Their ears are open. So what are we going to do? Are we going to do it authentically or not? I say it must be authentically. But not just that. It must be in a way that is not just the mind, the brain. We've been giving our brains away for 20 years, and it hasn't worked. I want us to give our soul away. I want them to hear who we are and love us for who we are. The problem right now is they're afraid. They're afraid so much that they brought Mama Bernie and Daddy Trump out. Mom, who Democrats want to be your mom and they want to give you the blanket and make you feel good, or Trump, who wants to be the dad and the sword and I'm going to protect you. I don't want to be your mom. I don't want to be your dad. I want to be your brother. I want to be equal to you. I want to love you no matter who you love. I want to love you no matter what substances you decide to use. I want to love you no matter what you do. And if you have a problem or an issue, I don't want to put you in a 12-year prison. I want to help you in a 12-step program. I want to love you. If they hear that message and we actually show them that we're not trying to cut everything and destroy everything, we're instead trying to empower them and bring back responsibility. We want to be like a responsible, loving sibling, not like a dictatorial parent. Even though we think we know better, we don't. We're libertarians. Let's be authentic and let them know.
Very good. All right, 2 minutes for Mr. William Weld.
Well, I'm going to take my 2 minutes to tell you a little bit about what I've done in the public sector, which would be directly relevant to this race and what might come afterwards. I've been in the private sector most of my working life. I had 2 stints of 6.5 years each in the public sector. The first was in the Justice Department as United States Attorney in Massachusetts for 5 years, and as head of the criminal division of the Justice Department in Washington for the better part of 2 years. My emphasis was on public corruption cases, which was prosecuting corrupt officials who'd stolen money from programs that belonged to the taxpayers. And also I emphasized civil actions and forfeiture to directly recover those monies for the benefit of the taxpayers. As governor, I was in from 91 to 97, mid-97. I was rated the most conservative and the most libertarian governor in the United States. You know, I was way fiscal conservative, cut spending in absolute dollars, and I came in when the state was on its back, and the unemployment rate went from the highest among the industrialized states to the lowest. So in 1994, when we came for re-election, we got 71% of the vote, because we've been very compassionate, very conservative. I had, frankly, led the country in terms of gay and lesbian issues with executive orders, and I appointed the woman who wrote the decision holding that gay marriage was constitutionally compelled, and that led to the Supreme Court case, which led to everything for marriage equality. My speech to the Republican convention in Houston, I was a new governor in 1992. I'm okay for a minute, right?
It's an additional minute.
So my speech to the Republican convention was short, and the theme was, and the founding statement was, my philosophy of government is I want the government out of your pocketbook and out of your bedroom. And that's a concise statement of my philosophy. Of course, the Pat Buchanan people in the front rows booed lustily and said, that's it, he just admitted it, he's gay, which shows you how flexible they were in their acceptance of a tolerant philosophy. My guiding philosophy was that there's no such thing as government money, there's only taxpayers' money, and that has stayed with me. Thank you.
All right, coming out hard, playing a chit right off the bat. And next we're going to go to Ms. Alicia Dearn.
I want you to know the person I am. I am a libertarian warrior. In 2011, I got sick, and that caused me to lose my job, which caused me to go to broke, which caused me to lose health care. My husband is an immigrant, and his chosen profession is a ship's captain. He cannot do his job because of the Patriot Act here in America. So you know what we did? We bought a house for $15,000 cash in St. Louis and moved there from California. It had no electricity, it had no plumbing, it had no heating, the doors and windows were boarded up, and it was winter. It was illegal for us to move in, but we did it anyway.
Yeah.
The first week that we were there, we got broken into. The police did not save us. My gun saved us. No one hires a sick person, so I started a business, and that's how we ate. My husband built our house board by board with his bare hands. It took us 2 years. That entire time, I did not have health care. The laws actually prevented me from getting it, and I got worse. Government interference with our health care system cost me my ability to have children, and I am mad as hell about it. I fought and I survived. Government only takes from me. Government tells me no, and government tells me I can't. It made it nearly impossible for me to escape abject poverty. Government hurt me like it hurts millions of people, like it hurts all of you. I survived. I got the strength to survive by becoming part of something bigger than myself, and that was the Libertarian Party. I devoted my life to fighting pernicious government. I fight in defense of my clients. I fight in defense of my family. I fight in defense of my country, and I fight in defense of myself. I am a libertarian warrior.
All right, on to Mr. Will Coley.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me here. My name is William Coley. I decided to run because I saw that things were not the way that I wanted them to be. That the Libertarian Party likes to talk about ideas, we like to talk about philosophy, but no one wants to talk about getting their hands dirty. I wanted to bring a voice of experience to this race. Someone who spent years of his life not just reading about libertarian philosophy, not just discussing it with my friends, but going out and proving that it works and that it can work for us in this country. I have dealt with men in I bring a voice of experience who knows what it's like to go through the hell that comes from living through our immigration system. I don't want to talk about libertarian philosophy. I want to talk about big ideas. I agree with Mr. Sharpe over there. We need to stop using our heads and start speaking with our hearts, but we also need to speak with our hands. We need to get out there and get our hands dirty. Do what it needs to be done. I see men that risk their lives every day to fight for freedom. People who stand up in places where it can literally cost you your head to stand for liberty, and those men stand anyway. Let me stand for you so that we can get a libertarian future.
Yes, brother, yes.
Thank you, everyone. I hope these questions are as good as those opening remarks. I'm going to start with a simple one first. Short and sweet. Who did more damage, Bush or Obama, and why? And in the pattern of this debate, we would like to start with William Weld this time, please.
I didn't hear the beginning, please.
Who did more that's a crazy accent I have, isn't it? Who did more damage, Bush or Obama, and why?
You mean to the budget or to the country?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I think that the Iraq invasion, in retrospect, turns out to have been, to understate it, always Yankee understatement, not such a great idea. And it's inflamed the Sunni-Shia conflict in the Middle East, which is one of the most dangerous examples of religious sectarianism in the world. And it's not, and then the sequelae in Libya and Benghazi and other countries in the Middle East have not been successful. Those were under Obama. So on a foreign policy point, I'd say both. The other thing is spending. And by the time President Obama leaves office, our deficit is going to be $20 trillion. That's a Bush-Obama deficit. You go back to Bill Clinton, there's nothing like that deficit. I'd rate it a tie.
Thank you. Alicia, to you.
They're both pretty bad. Bush got us into 2 wars that we were still in, and he massively increased spending. He did the bank bailouts, and none of that has made anything better for us. Obama has doubled down on those policies. We've had Obamacare, we've had additional bailouts, we've had crony capitalism, and now we're in 2 more conflicts. Who's worse? I would say by a nose, it was Obama, because he took all of the failed Bush policies and then he added to them.
Thank you, Alicia. Over to you, Will.
I would have to say it's definitely Obama. Bush may have got us into a lot of these different foreign entanglements, but see, Obama decided that he should take it a step further. Instead of 2 wars, let's have 12. Instead of bombing 3 countries, let's bomb 15. Instead of funding 1 revolution, let's fund 9. Before, we had an anti-war movement in this country. But see, Obama came along and he did away with all that, didn't he? Anybody hear the anti-war left out there? When I look for the anti-war left, all I hear is crickets. That's a big change in our country. There was always one group, one big group, half the country, that said they weren't willing to stand for bloodshed in the name of this country. And sadly, unfortunately now, we are that only group. We are that group that could bring a voice to that message. And that's why I believe that Obama was worse, was because he silenced the anti-war movement, and on top of that, he decided that entrapping Americans was good policy here at home.
Thanks, William. Over to you, Larry.
Could you imagine after 9/11 if all of a sudden we decided, instead of invading countries, we instead took our best special forces, all of them, the best in the world, and sent them after Osama bin Laden? Within a year or 2, the odds are we would have got him. We would have got him under Bush. But not just that. Imagine if we had not invaded any other nations. We had just gotten Osama and then come home. Removed ourselves from Saudi Arabia, removed ourselves from the Middle East. What would have happened? Would it be better there or worse? I don't know. But would they be fighting us? No. Would there be 6,000 dead Americans, which we don't seem to remember? 6,000 dead servicemen? Yes, there would not be those. Or the 20 or 30,000 severely wounded of my brothers and sisters in the military who came back and we ignored? No, they wouldn't be there. So, Bush had bad ideas, but Obama knew better.
All right, thank you. This next round starts off with Alicia. The question is, what role does culture play in creating a government that infringes our liberty, and what, if anything, can be done about it?
I think that culture plays a large role. People make decisions based on feelings and, in particular, fear. Fear is being used by our government to drive statist policies and to put people into power. It's hard to counteract fear because it's a major motivator for people. One of the best ways that we can do it is to talk in the same language of emotion, tell them that libertarianism is safe and it's compassionate and it's the way for prosperity and peace. If you can get people to believe that and believe that they do not have to live in fear and they do not need the state to protect them, then they will come to our team.
Mr. Coley.
Yes, I would absolutely have to agree that it's fear, and that's because I've studied history. I've spent quite a few years of my life studying the downfall of other pluralist societies that existed before our own. And what usually happens is there's some military threat that scares everyone to death. There's some overthrow, there's some occupation that scares the bejesus out of grandmothers. And what happens is we decide that we want to regress, not progress, regress back to old ideas and failed ways of doing things. Things that we cast off in the times of the common law and then cast off again in the time of the Declaration. We cannot embrace their views. We cannot allow them to use fear and anger to turn us against each other. We have to stand together. That's the only way a culture can survive, because every culture that's been overtaken by fear has followed the same exact path. And that's part of the reason why I'm running, is because I've seen in history how that happens and want to see it not happen here.
Mr. Weld. Oh, sorry, Mr. Sharpe.
Larry's good? Oh, good. About a month ago, I was teaching a class to a bunch of entrepreneurs in the construction industry. And one of the guys said to me, he said, Larry, I got a guy who made a $60,000 error, so I'm going to fire him. I said, why? You just spent $60,000 training him. Why would you do that? Why? Because we have a culture of punishment and a culture of no second chance that exists in our business world and also in our culture, in our government. Someone made a mistake, fire him. Someone made a mistake, punish him. Prosecute him, prosecute him, prosecute him. That feels good because we feel righteous, but that creates no long-term value. It also creates a system where no one has a second chance. She broke a law, put her in jail. Criminal, no job for her. He broke a law, criminal, no job for him. No second chance, punishment. It's wrong, it's bad, it hurts us all.
1 minute for you, Mr. Weld.
Well, I had thought the question was, what role does culture play in what the future of our polity is going to be? And if that's the proposition, I think that culture has a huge defensive role to play against us falling into a very unattractive position. Sir Kenneth Clark, the author of the book Civilization, said if you want to know how elevated a civilization is, look in the book of its art. And you see freedom of expression, and you see the kind of commentary that the great artists of the day are able to make on the society of the day. And I think they've gone hand in hand with some of the greatest civilizations in history. A subset of that would be freedom of the press, which is certainly a culture in the United States, although under attack, and that is a major bulwark against governmental power and a contributor to pluralism, which I think are two cultural aspects promotive of the kind of political society I want to see.
That's time.
Thank you. We're going to be jumping around with the questions. We're going to get a bit more philosophical with this one. How much of practical politics can be derived from the non-aggression principle? What other principles must be added to the non-aggression principle in judging policy positions? And we'll start with you, William.
Myself.
Coley. Oh, Mr. Coley.
I see the non-aggression principle as the philosophical base of any decision that's made, particularly by government. Force is not okay. Force is not something that we are okay with. That is a part of being a libertarian, is the fact that you reject the initiation of force. So if a policy initiates force on your neighbors, it is immoral. End of story. There is no argument. There is no discussion. If I think I have a right to use violence against you or your family for any reason, I am wrong. If I feel that I can give that right to someone else when I don't have it, I am wrong. You don't need to add anything to that. That's simple. That's plain. That's libertarianism at its very core. And that is how we should look at our political philosophy, as a philosophy that rejects the use of violence against others in any and all cases except for self-defense.
Thank you. Larry, over to you.
I wish I could just say ditto.
You can.
Remember something, everyone. Government is law. And most people think they're being righteous when they say there ought to be a law. They think they're not talking about force. There ought to be a law. I'm doing the right thing. But law is force. It's just outsourced force to our police force and to our judge system. And that's okay, because sometimes force is the right answer. If there's a victim, if there's a loss of property, or threat of loss of property, or life, or limb, then force is okay. But why would you want to use force for something that doesn't have a victim? If there's no victim, then there should be no force, then there should be no law, then there should be no government. It is that simple. The NAP is the basis. If I don't think it's okay to physically grab a cigarette from your mouth, then there should be no law about those cigarettes.
Thank you, Larry. Over to you, William.
Well, I certainly don't think a government should be run on the aggression principle only, although there's a lot of evidence that one of the major candidates for president this year feels that in his bones. And that way madness lies. We're going to be an outlier as a nation. We'll be violating all of our treaties. We'll be violating all of our international obligations. We'll be violating international law. We will be the rogue nation. We'll be the North Korea of the next 8 years if that happens. So, flipping it on its side, obviously that's a non-starter. I do think that the construct of a system of laws which can cabin and crib people around so that one bad person cannot make things happen in Washington, that is important. It's going to demand skill sets other than purely non-aggression. It will demand putting yourself in the position of your interlocutor across the table and thinking what's necessary to reach common ground, but maybe most people would think that's pretty non-aggressive. It's certainly not what they do in Washington today.
Thank you. Alicia, over to you.
The non-aggression principle is an excellent rubric to measure all of our laws and our policies. Our laws, government is law, and our laws should not extend beyond natural rights, which is life, liberty, and property. When we have laws beyond those things, that's when we have atrocities, and that's when we have human rights and we have suffering, human rights violations and suffering. That's when we have war. The problem with our government is that they have expanded beyond its primary purpose of protecting natural rights of its citizens and protecting the natural rights of the country into aggressive policies. If we could just reapply the non-aggression principle to our laws, we would have a major reduction of the state.
All right, next round of question starts with Mr. Sharpe. Should the U.S. be part of international organizations like NATO or the UN? Why or why not?
Right. One of the biggest mistakes we made after the Cold War ended was we didn't disband NATO. NATO's job was to defend ourselves against the Soviet Union. Once the Soviet Union went away, why didn't NATO go away? It should have immediately. All it did was make the Russians distrust us even more. We have problems now with them because they're saying, why do you want NATO? Why do you keep pushing it? It was worthless. George Washington told us, the first president, stay out of foreign entanglements, stay out. Absolutely. NATO, disband, get out, let them do what they want. If the EU wants to keep NATO, good for the EU. We are not part of the EU. If the UN, please go ahead. Absolutely. If the UN would be a completely non-enforcing, just collaborative agency, maybe. Otherwise, no UN.
All right, over to Mr. Weld.
So I do think there's an issue of mission creep with NATO, looking for new things to do, and a possibility of having outlived the original charter. So I think that's a legit topic to consider. Getting out of the UN, I've spent so much time in foreign countries in the last 10 years. I'm on an international foreign heads of state group that meets once a year to talk about issues such as water, food, nuclear war, religious sectarianism, and I hear about problems all over the world. And I go to other countries, mostly third world countries, with my business hat on, and I see all this suffering, and it's caused by governments. So I would stay in the UN to try to reach those problems of the citizenry by putting the heat on the governments.
All right. Over to Ms. Dearn.
Treaties and associations with foreign countries is a good thing. We should, in fact, trade with other countries, and we should have friendly relationships and diplomatic relationships with other countries. That is how we stay in peace and not in war. The problem is we have become the world's policemen, and treaties are used as a justification for us warring on behalf of our treaty neighbors. So, mission creep, I think, is a mild way of putting it. We need to revisit all of those treaties and determine whether or not we can use them in a peaceable way or whether we're just being used as the world's bully for our allies.
Great. Over to Mr. Coley.
Should the United States be part of NATO and the UN? Short answer, hell no. Plain and simple, no. We should not be part of the UN. We should not be part of NATO. It's not our business. It has nothing to do with us. We shouldn't be overseas trying to buy off politicians, trying to buy off governments, trying to use NATO. It's a hammer. That's the way that it works. If you have a hammer, you're going to try to find a way to use it. That's the way reality is. That's simple. It's simple logic. I have a hammer. I need to find a nail. That's what the UN is. It's a giant hammer looking for something to smash. And I would have to argue that you can't put pressure on governments overseas through the collectively enforce what their directives are. So no, you can't use the UN to put the pressure on those governments, particularly when our government is funding and arming them.
Thank you. Next question. What would be the first politically achievable, emphasize that, reform in the tax code that you would fight for? And we're starting with William Weld.
Well, I would fight for a 10 to 20% reduction in the size of the federal government, whether it's a reform of the fundamental system of taxation from the current system to a consumption-based tax, as Governor Johnson favors, or the alternative that I studied carefully when Steve Forbes ran for president, which is a flat tax of 17 to 19%. You know, I don't have a dog really in that fight. I'd studied them both, but I think there's just so much waste and fat in the federal government that it would be a reduction in the size of government. I let go 10% of the state workforce my first day in office in Massachusetts, I never received so much as a postcard about where those essential employees ever went.
Thank you, William. Alicia, over to you.
Well, I would like to just throw out the tax code. It's killing our economy, and it's a massive pile of regulations that nobody can understand. My own CPA, who's been doing it for 25 years, doesn't understand everything in the tax code. But if that's not politically achievable, then I would start with reducing the corporate income tax so that we can stimulate our economy by allowing entrepreneurs to get moving again and not taxing innovation and taxing labor.
Thank you, Alicia. William, to you.
I'm not really worried about what's politically achievable. We're libertarians. We don't have milquetoast ideas. We believe that taxation is theft. That's it. End of story. There is no discussion. Let's not work around the edges. Let's not change a little of this and a little of that. Let's get rid of all of it. Throw it out. The government has no right to my property. The government has no right to my wealth. End of story. The income tax should be ended. That is what we should advocate if we are elected into office. We shouldn't be worried about, oh, let's change the budget 20%. Oh, let's fix this over here 10% or 15%. Cut it all. Be done with it. The income tax is an oppressive system. Even religious institutions, every religion on earth thinks income tax is oppression. Why can we not agree on that simple fact?
All yours, Larry.
Used to be that we got most of our money from the federal government from other things than employees. Now we get a whole lot of our money from payroll tax. And what does that do? It makes you not want to hire people. It makes the government stop facilitating employment. I want the government to help, not hurt. So what I would first try to do is destroy the payroll tax. If we destroy the payroll tax, by default, people will have more money in their pocket. By default, people will want to hire more people. That will actually, by default, wind up cutting the government. We get something like, was it 35, 40%? We have Google, someone will tell me. Something like 35 or 40% of our income comes from employees. If we cut the payroll tax, we by default cut the income and we starve the government, and we allow people to hire without having to spend more money.
All right, thank you very much. And we're on to Alicia Dearn to answer this question first. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. My question, I'm really curious to see how you're going to ask this. As a Canadian, it seems to me that our Queen grants us about as much freedom as your president. Do you think that all the blood spilled in the American Revolution was therefore worth it? And when do you personally recommend armed rebellion?
You know, my husband's British, and we argue about this sometimes. Yes, I think the revolution was worth it. There is no king over me, and there never will be. Or queen. Our rights do not come from government. They do not come from the Queen. They come from the mere fact that we exist. Our rights come from our humanity. Life, liberty, and property. Nobody needs to grant that to me. It belongs to me, and it will until the day I die.
All right, Mr. Coley.
Well, funny enough, my last name is Coley, which comes from the surname in Scotland, McCullough, which actually translates to son of Wallace. So I've had no love for the British in my family for quite a long time. Where I grew up in East Tennessee, they decided that they were going to invade our mountainous region, and they said, we're not leaving this mountain until we win, and we buried those British generals on those mountains, because sometimes that's what you have to do. If the government becomes so big, so egregious, and so oppressive that you can't feed your family, you can't take care of your business, you can't do anything whatsoever, then there has to be a breaking point. Now, am I saying that we should take up arms against the government? No, but when the government takes up arms against you, it's quite hard not to think about it being a pretty good idea.
Over to you, Larry.
I would say revolution is always a good idea when you feel you have to revolt. But let's not assume that the only way to revolt is through violence. I think Martin Luther King Jr. would show you don't have to. Gandhi would show you don't have to. Nelson Mandela would show both. Nelson Mandela would show both. So neither is right, neither is wrong. Revolution is fine, but we're libertarians. We can revolt with our mouths, we can revolt with our guns, we can revolt with our feet, we can revolt with our wallets. There are many ways for us to revolt. So I think revolution is the right answer, was the right answer, but I don't want to keep it to just guns. If that's what it takes, Nelson Mandela said that, and so did Malcolm X. But some people don't, and they were all libertarians. Harriet Tubman, our founding fathers, all of them were libertarians, and they all revolted. They were all outlaws, and I'm okay with that. Choose your weapons.
All right, over to you, Mr. Weld.
Well, I very much think all the blood spilled in the American Revolution was worth it to throw off a system of government that was authoritarian and that thrust the individual in a corner. That would be us. And that's been of lasting benefit to us and to the world, which is why I think we should pay particular attention this year to proposals to have a possible president of the United States forswear all American law, and not all, but some American law and treaty violations in violation of the Constitution, to erect walls between countries, you know, something there is that does not love a wall, and there's a reason for that. To take on unilaterally killing the families of people who are suspected of bad activities against the United States. That's a violation of the Constitution, okay? So I think that shows a pattern of disregarding the lessons of, I think that shows a pattern of disregarding the lessons of history and the lessons of law, and it may be time for a little bit more revolution, and the revolution this year, politically, is the Libertarian Party.
So we are now on the final question of the evening before you guys get to wrap up. And the question is this: does the term libertarian have a branding problem? And if so, what should we do about it? And we're starting with you, William Coley.
Absolutely. Absolutely, the Libertarian Party has a branding problem. We have an image problem, a very bad image problem. I work with a lot of people on the left. I've done everything I can to try to bring more people from the left into the Libertarian Party, even though I came from Ron Paul. Try to bring more people from the left into the Libertarian Party, even though I came from Ron Paul Republicans into the party. So there is an image problem. They believe that we are the crotchety older version of the Republican Party, the segregationist party, the Koch brothers party, and that's not true. And that's part of why I'm running, is I want to rebrand the party, because we already are the party of progress. The left, they're not the party of progress. They're the party of old ideas, recycling ideas that have failed over and over for the last 150 years. They're not the party of progress. They're the party of regression. Our party is the party of progress. Our party is the party of tolerance. The only true progress in life is every step you take toward furthering the ideas of liberty, toward more individual freedom for each individual. I already threw one.
Oh.
Yeah. And, and what I want to do is I want to introduce the world to the real Libertarian Party, the party that ran a Jewish woman as their first vice presidential candidate and got us our first electoral vote, the party that was willing to allow an openly gay man to run for president in our party. We stood on political ground the left still will not walk near 40 years ago, and we need to do that again. show this country we are not the Koch brother party. We don't want segregation. All we want is businesses to be allowed to refuse service that they don't want to do service with. If you own a falafel shop and a guy has a Kill All the Muslims t-shirt on, I want you to be able to tell that man to get out of your store. The same as if you're a bigot and you don't want a woman with a headscarf in your business, I think you should be able to tell her to leave too, because that's freedom. That's what freedom is. Freedom is the ability to associate with who you want and who you don't. But we don't have to sound like racists to say that. Let me tell that message. I'll get it across.
Larry, to you.
We'll do that now.
Okay.
Excellent. When people hear us say, I don't want the federal government to be responsible for feeding every child in this country, people hear, you want children to starve. That's our problem. We have to change how we speak. If we start with that, that is what hurts our brand. We've spent so much time hitting them with logic because we're right. But if logic was the problem, we would have already won the White House and the Congress, and the White House would be a tourist attraction right now. That's what would have happened. So it's not logic. That's our problem. It is emotion and that feeling. We must change that. We must get them to hear our message, and we can do that now. Once we change it, instead of saying, I don't want the government to be responsible, we say, is there a better way? Is there a better way? How can we fix this? They will hear us. In fact, if you tell a statist, what's the best way to feed children? They won't say government. They'll say charity. Oh yeah, charity. Now we can talk. Now they will hear us, and that's what we need. They have to understand something. We are the only party that has an ism. There is no democratic-ism, republic-ism, libertarian-ism. Why? Democrats want what is good and will help, but they will do anything to get that with that good intent, and it will end up in punishment. Republicans will do what is right and righteous, but they'll do whatever it takes to do that. It will end up in punishment. But libertarians, we have something special. We have the non-aggression principle. That principle says that I don't want to force anyone to do anything. So everything we do by default does not end in a new way to punish. That is why we have an ism and they don't.
Thank you. Moving on to William Weld.
Well, I think there's something in the question. You know, maybe that libertarian and libertarianism should not be the first word we put in the ears of the voters. You know, some voters do hear libertine, and they think, oh boy, there's going to be a whole bunch of unattractive people in our neighborhood as a result if we sign up on this petition. If you cut to the substance, and instead of opening with that word, you say, well, we're on the ballot in all 50 states. This is what we think. We don't agree with the Dems or the Rs. We think A, B, C, D, okay? 55% of the country agrees with us. And then you can come back to describe, in general terms, freedom and liberty. In my part of the country, New England, the state motto of New Hampshire is live free or die. I love that motto. I love that motto. It's the only thing on my card, which is at your places. Live free. Now, live free is not going to excite any antipathetic reaction, and maybe that's the way to go.
Thanks. And over to you, Alicia.
Yes, I think there is some truth to the idea that there is a branding problem, but actually I think it's a communication problem. We're not telling people what libertarianism means in a way that they connect with, in a way that centers on their experience. But actually more than that, I think that most people just don't know what libertarianism is. I'll give you an example. The other day, I went and got my hair cut, and my hairdresser said to me, what's a libertarian? I get asked that a lot. You know what I said? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to tell you. Libertarianism, it's the idea that you do not need to ask the government for permission to live your life.
That's good.
And then I asked her, how much money did you spend getting a license to cut my hair? how much money do you have to pay the state of California for the right to work? And she said, you know, a lot of money, and it's getting worse. And I said, libertarians, we think that you should be free to cut my hair if I ask you to, without you having to get permission for it. And she said, I can agree with that, and so did everybody else in that salon. So that So libertarianism, yes, the Libertarian Party is not as powerful as it should be because we're not getting the message out and we're not explaining it to the people one by one and telling them how government is impacting their lives and why they should be free from it.
All right, so now we're going to have closing statements, and we'll do it in the reverse order of the opening statement. So we'll start with you, Mr. Coley. You have 2 minutes.
I ran for the vice presidential nomination for the Libertarian Party because I am a person who likes action. I'm not one who likes to sit and philosophize and jibber-jabber, what we call back home bumping gums, tongue wrestling, where you just sit around and you talk about ideas, you pontificate and discuss them, but no one goes out and gets their hands dirty. And I want to bring a voice to the ticket this year that has dirty hands. I want to bring a voice to the ticket that's been out there in the trenches, in places where most people fear to tread, trying to spread the ideas of freedom. I want to bring my experience helping men who will risk their lives to spread liberty. I want to bring that here. I want to inspire this party. I want to inspire this country. I want to inspire my fellow Americans. It's easy to break in a small place like Qatar or Pakistan or Malaysia. Those places are about the size of Pennsylvania. But see, America is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit harder to break into the national scene in this country. It's a little harder to get the opportunity for a bully pulpit to show people that experienced hands can show you libertarian ideas work. I'm not here to tell you about libertarianism. I'm not here to explain the way that it exists. I'm here to show you that it works. I'm here to bring a voice that has gone out there and helped other people prove that libertarian ideas are superior. Someone who has been in the trenches, someone who I love this party. I love these ideas. I am willing to go out and fight for them. I'm willing to die for them. Are you willing to die for them? I fight for liberty every day of my life. Will you come out here and fight for liberty with me?
All right, and we'll move to Ms. Alicia Dearn.
So I've centered my campaign around this idea of compassionate libertarianism. That is not a change to the libertarian ideal. It's explaining to non-libertarians that freedom is the answer. Liberty means trust. It means trusting people to live their lives as they choose. It means trusting that when other people meet their goals, it's for the benefit of us all. Liberty means hope, because hope knows no bounds. Liberty means prosperity, because it frees our people to create and to innovate. They can innovate anything that you can imagine. Liberty means opportunity for the disenfranchised. It is only in a free country where anyone coming from anywhere can run for vice president. If you love your fellow man, you will want them to be free. You will want them to succeed or even to fail, because they are free to learn and they are free to grow, and that is how people become their best selves. That is why libertarianism is compassionate. If you choose me, I will proudly and passionately carry this torch of liberty. I am Alicia Dearn, and I not only approve the libertarian message, but I will fight for it.
All right. Mr. William Weld.
So I will be eternally grateful to my dying breath to Gary Johnson for offering me the opportunity to be a part of these proceedings with him this year. And I do think that together, if Gary and I divide the work equally, which we're going to do, I think we can accomplish quite a lot for the country and for the party this year. As I said earlier, I don't think we should say boo on this person or boo on that person, but we should point out affably that we don't agree with either party, that we're, to the right on fiscal stewardship, we're to the left on issues of personal freedom, and then ask people, well, what do you think? Because about 50% of the country is going to say, that sounds okay to me. And the next step, again, as I mentioned, is to speak truth to power, reveal the emperor for wearing no clothes on those issues where the emperor in either party is wearing no clothes. And I think what that is going to do is enable us to make a run on the gridlock that has gripped the country, lead the country to discourse, and bring us to a situation where we can either be part of a very enjoyable, tumultuous conclusion to the election season this year, perhaps to the great benefit of the Libertarian Party, or at the very least have helped the country out of its doldrums and the miasma that has gripped our ruling parties in Washington, D.C. Both of them. Thank you.
All right, and finally, off to Mr. Larry Sharpe.
We all know that this is going to be our year. We know this. We all know that we are going to grow this year. We know this too. But what people are trying to tell us is this is our last chance. They're trying to tell us that the war is almost over. This is our last battle. That's a lie. This is the beginning, my brothers and sisters, the beginning, just the start. They will try to tell you that we only have one shot, and now we must lose our soul to win. No, no. This is the beginning and the beginning only, and we must be more authentic than we've ever been. Now, they are going to try to tell us that we have to accept and reinforce the terrible stereotypes that we've been burdened for years, that we are all Republican light. No, we are not. No, we are not. That is part of our party, and I love my Republican light brothers, but you are just part of my party, and that's all. That's it. Or that we are all white men over 60. We are not. That is part of us, and I love my white men over 60, but you are not all of my party. We are much more than that. We cannot reinforce those stereotypes. That's what they think we are. We are not that. We are much more. We need someone who will show them that. I am a veteran. I'm a minority. I'm a city boy. I'm an Easterner. I am also part of this party. My question to us is, if we believe this, if we believe two things, we have a big problem. Do we believe that you have to have government experience to be in government? If we think that we're in the wrong party, that convention is 2 months later, you should be going there. Second, do we believe that one Republican governor is not enough? If we believe that, we have a problem internally with our party. We must understand that one is enough and something else would help. We want to show who we are, reach the most people. We want to have the strength to be authentic. If we show them our soul, we will win their hearts and minds, we will grow, and we will win.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, your vice presidential candidates. On behalf of my co-host Robin and myself, you guys have a very difficult choice ahead of you, and you're lucky to have this much talent. Thank you very much. Stick around. for the chairman debate happening immediately.